Good afternoon, Shrevan JK sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Sivan.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sorry, I am from home this time, not from the office.
If you don't.
So welcome to the 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and thank you so much, sir.
Mr. Sivan, sir is MD and CEO of Dhanlaxmi Bank and my ex-colleague in State Bank.
Thank you.
Sir, with your permission, we will start, sir.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, Kritika, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Respected Shri A.K. Goyal, MD and CEO UCO Bank, Shri Prabhakar LV, MD and CEO Canara Bank, Shri Supratim Bankopadhyay, Chairperson PFRDA, Shri Shivan JK, MD and CEO Dhanlaxmi Bank, and ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to the 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. I would like to begin with a famous Sanskrit proverb, Vidya dadati vinayam, vinyadayati patratam, patratva dhanam apnoti, dhanat dharmam tat sukham, which means knowledge makes one humble, humility begets worthiness, worthiness creates wealth and enrichment, enrichment leads to right conduct, and right conduct ultimately leads to contentment. IIBF, in its long history, has been a preferred learning partner for the banking and finance professionals. As a part of its continuing professional development efforts, IIBF has been organizing an annual lecture in the memory of Shri late Purushottam Das Thakur Das. Today, we are honored to have Shri Supratim Bankopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, as the guest speaker for delivering 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. Today, we are honored to have amidst us Shri A.K. Goyal, MD and CEO UCO Bank and Vice President IIBF. Good evening and welcome to 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. I now request Shri Viswaketan Das, CEO IIBF, to give his welcome address.
Thank you, Kritika. Good afternoon to all the dignitaries, all the participants, and my colleagues from IIBF. Today, 10th November 2021 is a red letter day for Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. Today, the Institute is proud to organize 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. Eminent personalities from various fields have delivered this lecture in the past, like Sri N.R. Narayan Murthy, Dr. Montek Singh Ahluwalia, Dr. Ashok Lahiri, Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Dr. Subir Gokan, Dr. Vijay Kelkar, and on various topics ranging from economic reforms to talent management and bottom line results. I have the pleasure and privilege to welcome one of the eminent personalities from the financial sector with vast knowledge and experience in the related sector, Chairperson of PFRDA, Sri Supratim Bankopadhyay, who has kindly consented to deliver this memorial lecture on a very contemporary topic, increasing longevity, significance of pension and innovation. Sir, welcome to this webinar. On behalf of the Institute and all the participants, I welcome you to this webinar. It is my pleasure to welcome Sri Atul Kumar Goyal, MD and CEO of UCO Bank, as the Vice President and the Chairman of the Executive Committee of IIBF. He has always supported us in all our endeavors. I welcome you, sir, to this webinar. We are extremely happy to welcome Sri L.V. Prabhakar, MD and CEO of Canara Bank and also Vice President of IIBF. With his dynamic leadership, he has not only steered the bank, he has also helped us develop many programs in academics and training. We have with us Sri J.K. Sivan, MD and CEO of one of the upcoming banks, Dhanlaxmi Bank. Thank you for your kind presence, which is very encouraging for all of us. I am honored to welcome all the participants from various banks and other institutes and place on record our appreciation for sparing their valuable time for this webinar. I am sure you will find the topic interesting and deliberation enriching. Welcome to all you, sir, for this prestigious lecture.
Thank you, sir. I now request Sri A.K. Goel to render the inaugural address.
Thank you very much, Madam Kritika. Good afternoon to ladies and gentlemen. It's really my pleasure to welcome all the participants for the 37th Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. It is really our pleasure to have among us Sri Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairperson of the Pension Fund Regulatory and the Development Authority. I think there is no introduction is required for Supratim Bandyopadhyay ji. I am glad to be the part of this annual Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture organized by the Indian Institute of the Banking and the Finance. Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das was known as a Sir PT, and he was the founder member of the Institute of Banking and the Finance, and IIBF has been organizing the memorial lecture since 1981 as a tribute to the contribution made by Sir PT in uplifting of the Indian banking and the industrial sector also in the general and banking in the particular. If you see the history of the Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das, he was the eminent businessman. He has taken a lot of initiative for the economic development of the country before independence as well as the after independence. And he was associated with so many committee and the commission appointed by the government of India, and he was associated with the banking industry also, because he was on the board of directors of the Imperial Bank of India, as also the Central Board of the Reserve Bank of India since its inception 1935. The annual lecture has become one of the important events in the banking calendar since 1981, and distinguished speaker, as Mr. Ketan Das has already devised, have delivered the lecture in the past. This year, we are really honored that Sri Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairperson of the PFRDA, has accepted the invitation to deliver the Sir Purushottam Das Thakur Das Memorial Lecture. Sri Bandyopadhyay ji will be taking the lecture on the increasing longevity significance of the pension and the innovation. At today's fora, I would like to share my thought on the topic. Mr. Benjamin Franklin has once said that in the world, nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes. But when we take the deeper dig, the certainty of the death brings with it lot of uncertainty for the pension fund manager and for the individual's retirement planning. In the last few decades, the longevity trend suggests that longevity has not only increased but also become more complex due to the increasing uncertainty. This makes the job of the pension and the retire fund planner more challenging, and it is becoming challenging on account of the increased age of the people of the country. Increasing longevity not only change the population structure but also have the significant impact over individual savings as well as the government expenditure, and its uncertain nature translates into the longevity risk also. Longevity risk is certainly a long-term risk which starts as soon as a person joins a pension fund, maybe his or her late 20th, and run around till his or death. We may say an average for around 60 years, this risk needs to be managed. The pension markets have experienced significant movement and growth over the past decade. I am extremely delighted that Sri Bandyopadhyay ji has chosen this topic, and I hope all of us present here are keenly looking forward to hear his views on the increasing longevity, significance of the pension and the innovation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Prabhakar sir, a few lines from you, please.
Yeah, I can say that we are eagerly waiting for the chairperson PFRDA to deliver his lecture so that we can hear to him. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yeah, over to you, Kritika.
Unmute yourself, Kritika.
I now request Shri Ketan Das to introduce the speaker.
Thank you. As I told, the topic is contemporary and extremely relevant subject in today's world, where the formal and informal sector has changed, where the life longevity has also changed, the dismantling of family concept, increasing longevity. So all these things have changed the contours of this pension fund. And who else than the bankers, who are the torch bearers of this social banking, starting from the days of financial inclusion to popularizing social security schemes. Banks and bankers have performed creditably. So with this, I now present Sri Supratim Bandyopadhyay, chairperson of PFRDA, for this meeting. Sri Supratim Bandyopadhyay has assumed the charge as chairperson, Pension Fund Regulatory and Development Authority on 21st February 2020. Prior to taking over this new assignment, Sri Bandyopadhyay was the whole-time member of Finance PFRDA for 2 years. He has vast experience in the field of insurance and served around 3.5 decades at Life Insurance Corporation of India, the largest life insurance company of the country. During his tenure at LIC, Sri Bandyopadhyay served in various capacities, heading 2 large divisions as Chief Investment and Executive Director Investment LIC. He also held the position of Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of LIC Pension Fund. His areas of expertise include finance and investment, and Sri Bandyopadhyay has served on the board of Central Bank of India. He was in the Supervisory Committee, Investment Committee of Venture Funds and Alternative Investment Funds. He was also on the board of Fixed Income Money Market and Derivative Association of India for 6 years. Sri Bandyopadhyay is a science graduate and a qualified chartered accountant. He loves reading books and listening to light classical music. Sir, we are privileged to have you with us today amongst the bankers. Sir, over to you, sir.
Thank you and good afternoon. Hope I am audible.
Yes, sir.
So in these webinars, the first question we asked that whether we are audible. So yes, pandemic has changed the things. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Das, and thank you, IIBF, for extending this invitation to me. Thank you, Mr. Goel. Thank you, Mr. Prabhakar, Dr. Kritika, and all other senior people who are present here today, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really very privileged to be here today and participating in this lecture program. And as Mr. Goel has rightly pointed out, Dr. Sir Purushottam Das was really not only the co-founder of FICCI, as I understand, he co-founded FICCI in 1927, one of the earliest industry bodies, but he was one of the founding members with maybe with Sir Sohrabji Pochkanwala of the modern banking. I was on the board of Central Bank, so I still remember on the Founders Day every year when they used to arrange, we used to have somebody representing Sir Sohrabji Pochkanwala's family in that gathering. So to deliver a lecture which is dedicated to such a illustrious personality is really very important. And the topic that you have chosen today is not only important, it's very, very relevant today because it talks about longevity. So as we go along, I have a presentation. I'll show the presentation, and along that, the lecture also will continue. As Mr. Das rightly told, a large part of my life I spent in insurance industry, almost 3.5 decades. And in insurance industry, when we joined in early 80s, throughout almost we have been selling our product, which normally gives a life cover, and we used to tell people and the family members, if somebody dies early, what happens? But after joining here and after seeing the situation for last 3.5 years very closely from here, I believe we have to modify the question and ask people, what happens if somebody lives long? Because that is a risk, I believe now, which is assuming a greater proportion than what happens if people die early. So I have a presentation. If you kindly give the permission to share that, I'll share that presentation and we'll go along.
So you may share your PPT.
Yeah. So the first thing that when we talk about pension, longevity and all that, the first thing that we look at is the demographic of the country. So if you look at the demographics of India, the total population, of course, after the census data comes out, we'll know exactly where it is, but it is around 1.4 billion now, and it is going to go up to 1.6 billion at the annual rate of change, which is depicted there. But very interestingly, as per the UN population data projection, I think by 2027, there is every probability India will become the most populous country in the world. We still have a demographic dividend in the sense that a large percentage of the population, 67%, is within the age group of 15 to 64. But what is changing over these 30 years, 2020 to 2050, if you look at it, percentage of population aged 65 plus, which is 6.4% only today, is significantly going up to 13.8%. Though the percentage of population aged between 15 to 64 almost remains constant. So what is happening? People who are in the very young age group, maybe 1 to 14. So the aging pattern changes so suddenly that a large number of population is going beyond 65 years plus. So in pension and any retirement solution, we talk about the support ratio. Support ratio is how many people are there above 65 and how many people are there between 25 to 64 who are normally in the working age, who are supporting those people above 65 who are not working. Currently it is 7.7, but slowly it will be coming to 3.9. So now about 8% support a person who is not working. So slowly it will come down to almost half of that, which is 4. Total fertility rate, that is also coming down to the world levels. So, but at the same time, the aging population also is growing. The life expectancy at birth, for 1 century, almost last 1 century, we have seen every year the life expectancy at birth is going up by 0.3 years. So every 10 years, maybe it is going up by 3 years. So currently it is 69.7 for India, which is going up to 74.6. But life expectancy at 65 is 14.7. And we have checked the life expectancy even at 60, which is normally taken as superannuation age in India, currently is close to 17 to 18 years. And here the female life expectancy is almost 2 years more than the male life expectancy. So whatever decisions we take in this kind of financial products like pension and all that, gender equality is one important aspect that we have to keep in mind. So this is just a depiction as to how many people in the working population is supporting the elderly population. Like a seesaw, you see that it is literally coming down and putting a lot of pressure on the working population to support so many people. Number of individuals working obviously is coming down, and it will have ultimately a downward pressure on the GDP and per capita growth. So can we go to the next slide, please? As Mr. Das also has stated, this is a fact of life that we have seen in our own lifetimes. We have seen a rise in nuclear families due to urbanization, migration to cities, and all these things are happening. In our younger days, we used to see large families having 5, 7 brothers maybe. And always one peculiar thing used to happen in almost each family. There will be one member at least who will not be working in the sense that working to generate some money for the total family. No, he will be supporting the other family members in a big way by doing the household chores and supporting the children of the brothers and sisters. So those kind of things were there, and everybody was supporting everybody. So that thing has totally disintegrated today, and children are also preferring to live separately without their parents. And parents also have realized that, and many a times we see that parents make these kind of arrangements quite in advance, though they are maybe staying in the same city, same part of the world, but still they make separate arrangement for their children. Second thing that we are increasingly accepting is the old age homes. We have gone through a site, Helpage India and other sites, and there we found that total number of old age homes, which was around 500 about 5 years back, now it is more than 730 to be in this thing. There are many kinds of old age homes. Few of them actually allow stay free of cost. But there are old age homes which are charging almost per person 15 lakh per annum. So all kinds of old age homes are there, from just ordinary ones to maybe the 5-star old age homes. And we have seen in close family and friends also, slowly people are accepting. There are people who are consciously deciding that after a certain age, they will sell off their properties and all that, and they will settle down in an old age home. There was a concept which was, I believe, in the form of reverse mortgage, which was launched long back. But somehow I do not know the actual reason it has not become very successful. Because what happens, a house sometimes, instead of becoming an asset at an old age, becomes a liability. Maintenance and all that for an old couple becomes increasingly difficult. So it was nothing but creating some asset out of that house. But somehow I believe, to some extent, I also discussed in some forums about reverse mortgage. But basically people don't like the idea of giving their house away to somebody, even if they are not there. So they basically don't like that idea at all. So this is maybe a human psyche that we see in a country like India. So that could be the reason, but I really do not know. Bankers will be in a better position to tell that why it did not really take off, but it has not taken off the way it should have. Next. Now there are issues. There are health issues like declining physical and cognitive abilities of aging workforce, which impacts productivity, that all of us know. And it creates a problem in all financial inclusions. I had been to Japan maybe just before this pandemic struck, almost close to 2 years back. There I have seen one thing, that Japan, a large number of senior citizens, they are actually fighting a menace, a kind of thing, which is called dementia. People are forgetting everything. People have a good amount of money in the bank, they are well provided for. But in the system, the current system actually, what they are actually facing a big problem is that they are locking them outside that banking system, in the sense that they are forgetting their account numbers, they are forgetting their passwords, they are forgetting their user IDs, everything they are forgetting. So I was very interested to know that they are actually having specialized branches to support these kind of people. So that is another kind of innovation that is coming, because unless a country faces these kind of problems, nobody will think of this kind of innovations. Secondly, another change which is coming is investment in newer productivity enhancing technology to maintain the growth. Obviously, the labor force supply will come down. More and more people going above 60 or 65 obviously will affect the supply in the labor force. So how to maintain the productivity? More money, more investment has to go into productivity enhancing technology. Then old age income security, then comes the role of pension in a big way, and obviously the healthcare services. Because one thing that we have seen is that the lifestyle of a person, which he or she has built up over 30-35 years of work period, does not undergo a major change post-retirement also. People feel that post-retirement, I'll cut down on my expenses, and with my somehow pensions and other retirement benefits, I'll be able to manage. But many times we find that the lifestyles almost remain the same. And what really goes up and what is not really under our control is the healthcare services. In the first slide, we talked about our mortality experiences, which are improving, means people are living for longer. But there is one more concept in insurance, especially, and pension that we talk about, is the morbidity. Morbidity is what is the quality of that life. I am living for another 15-20 years post 60, fine. But what is the quality of that life? The morbidity experience is not that good. People are living, but people are suffering different kind of diseases, new kind of diseases. The last in the list, of course, we have all seen last 1.5 year, a pandemic called Corona, which was not there in our lifetime. We have never seen that. And we have seen how the healthcare services costs are going up. We have seen inflationary pressure on different our daily necessities, but the healthcare services, the inflationary pressure is 3 times more. The costs are going up tremendously. So unless they have good healthcare services along with old age income security, obviously those 15-20 years will be very, very difficult. So this is just a graphic presentation of how, like aging, your investment choices, portfolio choices actually totally undergo a big change. Younger ages when you are ready to take more risk, but when you grow old, maybe demand for safe assets will come, property, fixed income, treasury bills, it will be there. They'll be looking for inflation protected products, which are not there, unfortunately, in our market. We are trying to bring out one in the form of minimum assured return scheme, which will try to peg it to inflation or some kind of a some kind of a benchmark. So, but till that thing comes out, unfortunately, in our country, we don't have a product now available, financial product, which gives you a protection against inflation. We have annuity products, pension products, which gives you some kind of a 3% rise in the annuity rates year after year. But what happens, that annuity becomes so costly to begin with, it does not really serve the purpose for which it is taken. So labor supply, productivity comes down, economic growth rate comes down, investment lending opportunities for banks also will obviously have a deep lending margins will shrink. Similarly, if there is more demand for pension, retirement benefits, and medical services, obviously a large part of government spending has to go there, which may have an effect on the government borrowing program and the fiscal deficit. So all these things somehow are interconnected. And if we want to see any of these in isolation, I believe we are not going to do the right thing. Coming to the Indian retirement benefit solution scenario, I'm not talking about pension alone, all the kinds of retirement benefits which are available, it is very, very disintegrated, as the chart depicts. Obviously, we have EPA4, we have pension and annuity plans of life insurance companies, which are managed by IRDAI. We have national pension system, which is managed by PFRDA. And we have retirement plans of mutual funds, though they are coming, and we have seen some NFOs also, new fund offers also, but the total assets under management will be hardly about 12,000-15,000 crore, not much. Then there are approved superannuation funds and recognized funds approved by Commissioner of Income Tax, companies who go take the income tax approval, manage the funds as per the guidelines given by Department of Economic Affairs, DEA. Then the civil service pension. In our younger age, when we used to talk about pension, always it was associated with government service. Acha, you are working in a government department, you are getting a pension. But slowly that pension came out from the government domain. Maybe some of the private sector companies, big MNCs also, during our insurance days, we have seen, they started giving pension, and they started giving pension only to the very senior employees, top group of employees, and the board members and all that. Then there are social security schemes of Government of India. One such scheme even we are managing under PFRDA, that is Atal Pension Yojana. We have close to more than 3 crore 10 lakh customers under that. And then there are certain schemes managed by the Labor Department, PM Shram Yogi Mandhan, PM Karm Yogi Mandhan, PM Kishan Mandhan. I believe this is being managed under the Agricultural Ministry. All these taken together, about a little over 40 million people are covered. Then we have national social assistance programs, which talks about Indira Gandhi old age pension scheme and all those kind of schemes, and PPF and all that, and provident fund statutory. So it is very, very disintegrated. Everybody is doing some kind of giving some kind of retirement benefit solution, but this being so disintegrated, for a normal person, it is very difficult to understand which particular pension plan or retirement benefit solution I should go for, which will give me cover against long life. There is a pension efficacy measurement system which is created by Mercer and CFA Institute, and they create a global pension index. The latest index has measured the efficacy of 43 different countries, and we find that India is unfortunately at the 40th position. And there are 3 parameters on which they actually measure that. One part obviously is the adequacy. How adequate the pension that we are giving. Sustainability, I am giving some kind of pension, but whether it is sustainable. And the last part is the integrity, which is the regulatory reforms in the pension sectors which has happened. Though we have scored little better in integrity, but in adequacy and sustainability, we are far below the top ranked ones. The top one, obviously, I believe is Iceland, and there are some Scandinavian countries which have done quite well, but with only 43.3, there are only 3 countries, I believe, below us: Philippines, Argentina, and Thailand. They are only below us. And the report has recommended that introducing minimum support for the poorest of the aged group. That is one of the suggestions. Covering unorganized working class under pension. That is a tall order, because out of our total workforce, almost 90% are coming under unorganized. And our Atal Pension Yojana is totally focused towards them. So we are doing some bit of a job, but I believe there's a lot to be done to cover these 90% of the working class population who are coming under unorganized sector. Introducing minimum access age for retirement benefits. Actually, many a times these retirement benefit solutions are utilized much before the working life ends. Like we see in EPFO, easy access is there. People are utilizing their money for different reasons and all that. And in many cases, we find that when people actually retire, their pension pool or the retirement corpus is so small that it will not last them even for 3-4 years also. That's why knowingly under NPS, what we have done, initially when the pension plan started, NPS, the National Pension System, there was no early access before retirement. But slowly we have relaxed the conditions and we have allowed only access for 3 times. But again, we have limited that access to only own contribution, and that to only 25%. So that way we ensure that a large part of that pool remains for your retirement benefit, actually for which this fund is created. And fourth suggestion obviously is improving regulatory requirements for private pension. So which through NPS we are doing, but there also, I believe, we continue to innovate and to see that how we can reach out to people in a big way. Financial literacy actually plays long and important part here. And pension literacy, we see that even it is very poor, and we cannot blame our country alone, because when we go abroad, I have seen stayed in UK for a week and seen their pension system also. So a large part of their money goes into making people literate about pension and how to use the money properly. So here also we have an organization which is set up by all the 4 financial sector regulator, RBI, SEBI, IRDAI, and PFRDA, National Center for Financial Education, where we have started in the right earnest for creating some kind of a financial awareness. But here I want to point out one particular issue. Financial awareness is one part, but financial behavior, to a great extent, we see that there is a big difference between the financial awareness and the financial behavior. What I mean by a financial behavior, I may be literate, I may know about the functions of the financial market, but in a certain situation, how I behave, whether I behave in a very rational way, rational fashion, or whether I behave or go with the exuberance in the market and do something which is ultimately proved to be very irrational. So that is also a very important thing. But post-pandemic, we have seen that there are some changes in the individual spending pattern. People are maybe investing and saving in newer kind of investments, especially in the mutual fund space. We have seen many new accounts are opened up, and to a large extent today, the kind of buoyancy and exuberance that we see in the equity markets is sustained by retail buying. It is sustained by retail buying. I was just, before coming here, looking at that Paytm IPO, that is the biggest IPO since we have seen Coal India IPO in 2010. And I have seen already, today is the end of the second day, the retail part is oversubscribed by 2 times. And it's a large IPO, so to say. So there also the retail part is almost oversubscribed by 2 times. So there is a lot of retail participation in the market, and all these things are happening. And fortunately, a large number of people are now looking into pension as one of their options, because people have seen job cuts, people have seen that there are cuts in their wages. So now they feel that they have to set aside some corpus for their retirement, and maybe pandemic has forced them to make a change in their savings pattern. See, now what are defined contribution pension systems? Actually, defined contributions is nothing but where the contributions made by the subscriber, or even if there is an employer is there, whether everything is defined, whether both are paying maybe 10%. Currently, government has decided for central government employees, they will give 14%. I believe now IBA also has decided, and it's a great decision that IBA has taken to contribute 14% for their employees who joined after, I believe, a cutoff date in 2010. And more than, I believe, 5.5 lakh to 6 lakh employees from public sector banks are under NPS, and IBA has taken this decision. So that will go a long way, I believe, in generating a sustainable corpus which will support them when the need arises. This is a very, very sustainable framework, and it really gives a old age support as against the old pension scheme, as we have seen in Government of India, and maybe what we have in public sector banks before, and insurance companies, public sector insurance companies before 2010. But there was some funding concept. But so far as government old pension scheme is concerned, there was absolutely no funding. So entirely it was pay as you go, and it is paid out of the exchequer of Government of India. So it was absolutely unsustainable. So against that, defined contribution pension system is a very well organized and well managed pension system. Talking about NPS, total subscriber base is now about 4.7 crore. Out of that, APY contributes a large part. I believe 3 crore 10 lakh comes out of that, and central, state government, and retail all taken together is the balance 1 crore 60 lakh. Out of that, central and state government, as you know, the central government decided from 1st of January 2004, whoever joins will necessarily come under NPS. So under central government now, currently about 23 lakh employees are under NPS. And state governments, different state governments had chosen different dates. They had different notifications. So they are also about 52, 53 lakh people are under NPS currently. All state governments, apart from Tamil Nadu and West Bengal, they have adopted NPS for all their employees after that particular cutoff date, whatever they have chosen. Now our focus from PFRDA is obviously on corporates and citizens, means that is the retail sector. And this number, which was only 1.3 million 3 years back, it has just reversed. Now it is 3.1 million after 3 years. And the total assets under management of this retail sector and corporate sector also has increased tremendously to more than 1 lakh crore, 1 trillion rupees. That way, the total assets under management that we are managing is about 6.8 trillion rupees as of now, as we talk, and it has increased from little over 2.2 trillion rupees as at 31st March 2018. So growth has been tremendous. Even last 1 year, if we talk on year-to-year basis, more than 23% growth in subscriber registration, more than 31% growth is there in the assets under management. There has been steady contributions, a lot of people are joining, and what we have done, especially during the pandemic, we have opened up these online channels aplenty. That way, I thank all the bankers present here today for making it possible, because you are our distribution channel and you have done an excellent job by allowing these channels to the subscribers, so that sitting at the comfort of their home, today they can open an NPS account maybe in 2 to 3 minutes flat. And now we have allowed that once the online accounts are opened, the e-signs are done, and everything is done, thereafter there is no need to send a set of physical copies again to our record keeper. Earlier it was there, that also we have done away with. So that way it becomes very, very easy for the individuals to sit at home and do it. Secondly, in the corporate sector, what is happening? In corporate sector, lot of corporates are finding NPS as a better solution because it gives a better return. Currently, our returns under the equity schemes for last 12 years is close to 13.5%. For the same 12 years, our corporate bond schemes give a return of more than 10%. And the government security schemes gives around 9.6%. And this is the CAGR I am talking about. And 12 years, of course, is not a small time. I agree that it is not a pretty large time, but 12 years is somewhat mid-term kind of thing. And for a pension sector, which is pretty long-term, 12 years also can give you some idea as to how the pension fund managers' performances are. Secondly, is that it gives you an exclusive tax benefit as an individual, 50,000 exclusive tax benefit, which is not there. And this is possibly the only retirement scheme when at the point of final retirement and final withdrawal, 60% of the corpus is allowed to be withdrawn tax-free. In other places, it is only 1/3. So there also it scores. So whether it is at the point of contribution, whether it is at the point of accumulation, or whether it is at the point of retirement and withdrawal, it is all tax-free kind of a scheme. So that is scoring quite well. Secondly, yeah, go to the next slide. Secondly, we are talking about the health cover part of it also, because not only pension, I believe for to address the issue of increasing longevity, we have to talk about health insurance coverage also. So we believe it will create a lot of competition amongst insurers, and it will give a lot of innovative products. Because during the corona pandemic also, we have seen that people could not get the right kind of treatment because they were not having the health insurance cover that they require. Because not only pension, this health insurance cover also is quite important to meet the challenge of longevity. Next. So slowly, I believe in financial products also, user-friendly processes has to come in, accessibility of services, so that, and especially for elderly generation, we have to treat them with a lot of sensitivity, whether it is banks or any other financial product developer. We have to deal with them with a lot of sensitivity. And many of them, these senior citizens, still feel that it is safer to come, sit across the table, discuss, and thereafter decide on a matter, rather than using the online channels. Many of them still are not very, very comfortable with online channels. I have many senior colleagues, senior friends, and they still feel that using the net banking channel also sometimes poses challenge for them, because they are not sure what is really happening there. So that is there. Very simple and easy to understand kind of products that we have to bring in. In PFRDA also, we are thinking of bringing new innovative product, which will not only help people in accumulating their funds, but at the point of withdrawal also, we are going to offer maybe systematic withdrawal plan kind of thing, which is of course awaiting the parliamentary approval, because currently we can only offer annuities to them when they go out of the system. So all these things are very, very required, very much required to see that we really cater to the need of the elderly generation. Pension assets as a percentage of GDP often taken as the level of development of that country. There are countries like UK, USA, Australia, and many of the Scandinavian countries where you see that the pension assets as percentage to GDP is very high, more than 100%. Whereas in India, all these fragmented retirement solution providers, as we have shown in an earlier slide, including EPFO and all that, it is just about 14% of our GDP. So it is, we have a lot of catching up to do. And secondly, pension funds are long-term funds. So to a great extent, the growth of pension systems will see that it goes into infrastructure development in a big, big way. That way, pension and insurance funds can sustain the infrastructure growth in a very big way. We see that a lot of overseas pension funds are coming here, especially the notable ones are Canada Pension Plan Investment Board, CPPIB, Ontario Teachers Pension Fund, and many such funds which come here and they invest in our infrastructure in a big way. We have seen them going into the REITs and InvITs route in a big way. So I believe slowly, if our pension assets also grow, will not be depending so much on foreign fund flow in a big way. Today, the way our equity market is sustained by a steady flow from the retail participants. So our infrastructure also can sustain from a flow from the pension fund managers, because pension funds world over in developed countries, pension funds managed by different pension fund managers are much, much larger even than the insurance funds. So this is the, I believe, times that we are waiting for. And I believe a time is going to come when pension funds will decide the quality of assets a country is building. And not only that, it will depend the capital market also in a big way. Today, like 6.8 trillion rupees that we have, more than 1.15 trillion rupees is in the equity market. More than 2.25 trillion rupees are in the corporate bond market. So these in a different way actually deepen the capital market and bring in a lot of transparency in the market and the market players. So I believe this will go a long, long way in creating economic development. So before I end, I just want to say that we have to continuously evolve, adapt, and innovate. Longevity is there, and longevity is going to stay. It's not that it's going to go away. And the way the medical facilities are improving, the way we have better access to medical facilities, I believe people are going to live much, much longer. But how we can create a situation where this older generation lives with respect, dignity, and we take care of their well-being. 1st of October, now we have decided every year, because 1st of October is the day of senior citizens, which is celebrated by United Nations. we have chosen it as the day of NPS Divas, and every year we are going to do it in a big way. And we want to give a focus that if you want to have respect, dignity, and well-being at a certain age, you have to start early. Pension is a topic which is normally kept aside for future consideration. And when the time comes, unfortunately, we have seen the time comes when a person is well advanced into age, maybe late 40s or early 50s. A person, gentlemen, we are having a discussion with CII, one of the industry bodies, and one of the gentlemen asked a question that I am 50 today. I have a total corpus of 10 lakh rupees and I want 40,000 rupees of pension when I retire at the age of 60. So I have 10 years to go. So how much do I really need? Currently, even if you take the highest annuity rate of 6%, that gentleman will be needing 80 lakhs of corpus. So that means in next 10 years before retirement, even if he puts his entire salary, whatever net take-home pay he has, that will also not suffice. Only reason is that maybe we have started late. So now I believe all of us, including PFRDA, we have the responsibility to think about this, that longevity is going to stay, and we have to take care of that by taking care of saving little bit from day one when we join our service. And as we go along and as we grow along with the organization we are working for, we have to maybe again allocate more and more towards that. And with that, I believe we'll be talking again, taking a cue from what I have learned in Japan. They are talking of a gray economy, a part of the economy which is driven by gray-haired people. So now we'll not think of gray-haired people or people who have retired and gone out of the workforce as burden. We'll think that they are also very much a part of the economy and they are driving a large part of the economy. So with that, thank you all, and thank you once again for giving us this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. This has been quite elaborative, also informative and educative for all of us. What you rightly said, the demography will change. We may have more gray-haired people, but recently the World Health Organization, the report says up to 65 you are young. That is the report. So that shows that the longevity will grow up, sir. But sir, you rightly said the inherent fear of all of us, what will happen post-retirement. But unfortunately, we think of this thing when we are closer to the retirement, not at the young age. So in the digital era, what has happened, the role of bankers have changed, sir. They are now more like counselors to the customers. So perhaps this financial literacy, all these things will happen through bankers, and my banker friends are here listening to you, and they will take this message. And the saving grace is NPS, but as you rightly said, the literacy level has to grow. We thought, sir, Mr. B. Ramesh Babu has also joined, MD CEO of Karur Vysya Bank, and with all these dignitaries, I think there will be a little interactive session maybe with you, sir. Bankers will have some questions naturally, because as you rightly said, the person at 50, he will require 40,000. Then what will happen? So now I think, sir, the floor is open to all. They can, the candidates in the panel, they can directly answer, ask the questions, or the participants can write in the box, or they can raise their hands. So we can take the questions. Kritika, please.
Yes, sir. I request the attendees that in case they have any question, they may raise their hand in the application. Sir, we have one question from Dr. Pallavi Chauhan. Sir, can you please elaborate on the issue of tax treatment of NPS?
See, as I said, so when you contribute, the contribution to the extent of 50,000 extra over and above that ATC level of 1,50,000 is tax-free. And this 50,000 is exclusively given to NPS. So that is one part. Second is the entire accumulation, that is tax-free. There is no tax on the accumulation part. And thirdly, when you are withdrawing at the point of retirement, when somebody is superannuating, 60% is allowed tax-free, but people feel that 40% is taxable, balance which is converted to annuity is taxable. That is not. When the money goes to the annuity service provider, it is absolutely tax-free. And not only that, to purchase a normal annuity, you have to pay a GST of 1.8%, but government has very kindly allowed purchase of annuity from NPS without GST, so that even 1.8% GST is also not applicable. People get, say, 100% tax-free from EPF, so they compare between the two and say that, no, yours is not entirely tax-free. What we are actually doing, instead of giving 100% in hand, since it is a pension scheme, we are ensuring that 40% goes to buy an annuity. The annuity income is taxable. Similarly, I am getting 100% free of tax from EPFO, but obviously I am not keeping that idly. I'll be putting that somewhere. Even if I buy a bank FD also, or put in any other investment or this thing, the income from that is taxable. So similarly, the income from that 40% NPS corpus at the point of retirement is taxable. But that 40%, when it comes at the point of retirement and goes to the annuity service provider, it is not taxable at all. There is no TDS at that point. So technically, both are triple kind of products as it stands today.
You unmute Pallavi ma'am. Ma'am, welcome. Sir, Miss Pallavi Chauhan from RBI.
Sir, yeah, thank you very much, sir, for the clarification. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the reason why I asked you this question was there is often this criticism, or rather the comparison that's being done with NPS and EPF. And one of the things that come out is that EPF happens to be EEE, that is exempt at all 3 stages, while that is not the case for NPS. But thank you, sir, you have explained it, so I have got that. So there is another question that I had asked in the chat box, and that is about how do you react to this concern that's expressed by employee unions about investment of by pension funds into market-based securities or into the markets directly, as a result of which the returns are not very certain for them. How would you react to that concern, sir, that's expressed often by unions?
Yes, we obviously invest in the financial market, and I feel that absolutely there should be no concern about that, because whoever is taking money today, like EPFO is also putting in markets in a big way. And initially, they were not putting in equity for quite some time. They have seen the results, and thereafter they have gone into equity in a big way.
Now I meant equity. Yes, sir. Sorry. Yes.
Equity in a big way. And of course, they are putting through the ETF route. That is another part. But whether you are putting through ETF or whether you put it directly in a stock, ultimately you are part of the market only, and you are part of the market volatility. So what exactly we have done here is to see that volatility is there. Volatility is part of financial market, but at the same time we ensure that our fund managers put within the broad guideline that we have given. Now we have increased it to, say, 200 top stocks of NSE and BSE, and there the minimum market cap, we have checked it, it is around 19,000 crore. So these are very well-known, large cap, well-researched companies. So, so that way we keep control. We have regular review mechanisms to find out if somebody, and we have a well-defined benchmark created by CRISIL to monitor and measure their performances. So that's why that 13.5% kind of equity return over 12 years has come like that only. And it is well proven theory, sort of, that if you go into equity in the earlier phase of life in a big way, and
Mhm.
thereafter reduce your exposure to equity as you say approach late 40s and all that, always you will reap the benefit of that equity growth. Because
Right.
everywhere, whether it is in mutual fund or any other fund management business, you have seen that equity always gives a much higher return. Only thing is that you have to be very careful. We have very strict stop loss policies. Is that if your stock really goes down below this level, you have to necessarily sell.
Right.
So all these things taken together ensures that we get the best outcome from the market.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Next we have Dr. Surya Bahadur Singh. Dr. Surya Bahadur, you may ask your question. You may unmute yourself and ask your question. So he has written that whether blockchain technology or AI ML will provide innovative solutions to improve pensioner services.
Yes. Especially the artificial intelligence and all that. In fact, we have appointed BCG to improve our IT capabilities, and there one of the suggestions is to use chatbots to give some suggestions. Obviously, these are suggestions only to our customers as to what kind of investment pattern they will choose, because NPS is very flexible. As an investor, you decide where you want to invest, means which particular asset class and how much you want to invest. But at the same time, many people, those who are coming into this kind of scheme for the first time, they may not really know what is good for him or her. So that way, these chatbots will help them in making a decision that this could be good for you. That way, we have tailor-made schemes. We call it life cycle funds. Like if you are not in a position to decide what is good for you, the best is to go for these life cycle funds. This auto rebalances every year. Suppose I am 35 today and I have taken say 50% equity exposure, that kind of a life cycle fund. So as I go to 36, what will happen? My equity exposure will go down by say 2%. So like that it goes down, and ultimately maybe it will end at 10% when I reach the age of 50. So this kind of auto rebalancing models also are inbuilt into our system. So if you choose one of those auto rebalancing models, you don't have to worry. On every birthday, next birthday, it will get adjusted accordingly without referring to you.
Thank you, sir. We also have with us Mr. Piyush Kumar Jha. Ask your question.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, please.
Sir, COVID has affected a livelihood of street vendors drastically.
Yes.
So here I would like to ask, is PFRDA coming out with like some pension plan that with low premium, which may benefit them in the future?
See, we have APY, Atal Pension Yojana, which is mainly focused towards these unorganized sector, and there the age group that we are catering to is 18 to 40. So at the age of 18, suppose a person can take a 5,000 rupee guaranteed pension cover, and the monthly contribution will be only 210 rupees. Secondly, what we have done is that suppose you are not able to pay every month and there is a delay. That does not mean that you will lose the benefit. Thereafter, whenever you are in a position to pay, you come back and pay, and the scheme will run just like that. During COVID period, we got requests from banks, because this also is run through the banks, and banks recover the contributions every month from their bank accounts, savings accounts that they maintain. that this will be not the right time. So for 3 months, April, May, June, we did not recover any amount. And from July again, we started. But there was no penalty or delayed interest or anything like that. So this is the product that we are focusing towards, not only the street vendors, but the small time workers, even domestic workers also in a big way, so that they can come and take advantage of this guaranteed pension. NPS is not guaranteed, but APY is guaranteed. Though the pension amount is limited to 5,000, but it is guaranteed, and it is guaranteed by Government of India. We had a recent discussion there. Even the guarantee gap that is there, the valuation gap of assets and liabilities, that also government has committed. Either at one go, they will fill up that gap, whatever is there currently, or they will do it over a phased manner over a number of years. So all these things are happening, and I believe APY in a big way will support these kind of people, those who do not have office jobs, so to say, or those who are coming from the unorganized sector.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering all the queries of our attendees. I now request Dr. S. Muralidharan, Director Academics, IIBF, to sum up and deliver vote of thanks.
Mr. Sivan, would you like to share something? Mr. Uda?
No, actually, I have had personal interaction with Dr. Bandyopadhyay, like Mr. Bandyopadhyay, when for an APY function in Chennai. And actually, we all in private sector banks have a big issue. It's the what is looming ahead of us is the pension issue. Whereas, like, old banks have been able to provide for the pensions, but pension will be a bigger issue if an organization decides to pay pension to an employee. Going forward, we have to take a lot of care to see that pension funds are created. So regarding that, we had a private conversation with Sir, and it was very enlightening. And most of us actually even expressed a desire to move our pension to PFRDA, but it's a long haul. Process is already there on. So that's why if Sir has any other any developments on this side, then I would be glad to hear that. Otherwise, pension is a big issue for all of us.
Yeah, Mr. Sivan, you rightly said that, and we had a long discussion in Chennai regarding that, and we'll be very happy to provide any kind of support that you may require. So if some people can come over to Delhi, or if we need to go to Chennai, you can tell us where we can meet a few of you who will drive the process, and what are the issues. If you flag off, we'll try to see that all these things are addressed properly.
Yes.
So that way, PFRDA possibly is the only authority which is supporting even corporates also and handholding them to change over from their existing superannuation fund to NPS. And we have held many big ones, including Steel Authority of India, FCI, Indian Oil, HPCL, BPCL, many. So we do that, and we'll be very happy to do that for you also.
Thank you, sir. Like CMD, Mr. Rajendran and Mr. Federal Bank CMD also, they are working on it, so we will be approaching you. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Rajendran was telling me, so
yes.
If you have a proposal, please kindly send across.
I'll work in coordination with Mr. Rajendran only, sir. And actually Federal Bank MD also, CMD also.
Okay.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, Prabhakar sir, your comments and message to the participants, sir.
One small question. Now this NPS, I think we're deducting about 14% from the employees. Suppose, as per your opinion, sir, to take care about the future, whether this 14% which we are debiting and contributing from the institution is sufficient, taking into consideration the future requirement, or do you suggest that the percentage has to be increased or reduced?
So to tell you very frankly, Mr. Prabhakar, 14% for the time being may look good, but that figure may not remain constant over a period of time, because certain things are not under our control, even the inflationary pressure and all that. So just some light this thing, So my daughter, when she joined, she was joined a IT sector company. So she was telling, Papa, how much do I set aside for my retirement? I said, Ki, see, when my father retired 34 years back, he set aside something. And maybe when I retired, I got 34 times more than what he got during his retirement. But still, I am not able to give you the same kind of lifestyle which he had given at that point of time.
So what will be
So
the ideal
this is
process?
the thing, this is the way things are, the money value is coming down, and so people still think a crore or 1.5 crore, 2 crores maybe will be sufficient, but that may not be sufficient. So that needs a constant this thing, and I suggest that from IBA, maybe at a later point, if you think so, it's right, you can do an actuarial valuation to find out. Suppose if you said that you want your employees to have a net replacement rate, which is what percentage of last drawn salary you want them to give, say 30% or 40%, and for that, what is the gap like? So they will be doing the calculation and they will tell you. So on the basis of the calculation, if you take a decision, I believe that will be more pertinent, and it will be a long lasting kind of a thing. And sir, now that you have asked about that 14% thing, I have one more suggestion. It's a very personal kind of suggestion. And to Mr. Goyal also, that I have already discussed with Mr. Rajkiran Rai. I have already discussed with Mr. Sunil Mehta when that report came out that Finance Ministry has approved the proposal of 14% contribution. 14% contribution is fine, sir. But only thing is that if they make it in line with central government employees, because only central government employees for that 4% extra contribution, it is not treated as perquisite in their hands. But here, unless the same provision is made applicable to bank employees also, that 4% will be taxable. And many bank employees, I believe those who joined even in 2010 will be in 30% bracket. So the net addition will be less. So that part, if you can take up with the Finance Ministry, now that they have given this 14%, at least if the same parity is brought with central government employees, that will really help you in the long run.
Good suggestion, sir. Sir, one more thing, sir. Don't you feel that this fixed percentage of 14 for clerical, for officers, for executives, same thing for everyone? Is it right, or the percentage should vary? Or what is your suggestion, sir?
That also can vary, really, that also can vary according to the grade. That also can vary.
Thank you, sir.
But only thing is that if you do an evaluation kind of thing, that will give you the exact nature of the contribution or percentage of contribution that you have to do. And that will be, I believe, little more scientific maybe.
We'll discuss in the IBA, sir, because.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. Well, sir, your last comments before we thank Dr. Bandapalya.
The discussion was very healthy. Discussion was very up to the mark. The worry is only whatever Mr. Prabhakar, I will take the whatever Prabhakar has told. Ultimately, issue is this, ki whether it is a 10% or 14%. At the time of the retirement, what they are going to get. That is the only issue.
Yes.
Maybe, yeah. Because
one more suggestion, maybe now that
please,
Mr. Goyal is also asking the question, I have one more suggestion. The IBA may also can actively engage with the employees and tell them that, okay, 14% is given by the bank, the employer, 10% is given by you. But that does not stop you from contributing something more. So increasingly, suppose now they are getting, say, every 5 years they get a wage revision. Suddenly huge cash flow comes to them. Why don't they set aside something out of that? Or every year they are getting some kind of an increment. Out of that, why don't they set out something? And we don't stop. Even after 10% also, if they are contributing on their own, That is always allowed. So that also can be done, because in our old PF days, I remember we used to have PF contribution, employer-employee, and we used to have our additional provident fund contributions. So similarly, if they want to have their additional pension contributions, they are always welcome. And I believe that will be a good thing to begin with. Maybe only few employees will do that, but that is possible. That is possible if that is brought to their knowledge. I believe few of them will start doing that, because ultimately IBA decisions, all the banks will sit together and take that decision maybe, and ultimately it has to have the approval from the ministry. So it's a long drawn process, but this process can start immediately because it is for individuals.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sir. Respected dignitaries, Shri Supratim Bandyopadhyay, Chairman PFRDA, Shri Atul Kumar Goyalji, MD and CEO UCO Bank and Vice President IABF, Shri LV Prabhakarji, MD and CEO Canara Bank and Vice President IABF, Shri Sivan JK, MD and CEO Dhanalakshmi Bank, Mr. Ramesh Babu, CEO of Karur Vyasa Bank, CEO IABF and other senior officials, ladies and gentlemen. Rather, we are indeed fortunate to have amongst us Shri Supratim Bandyopadhyay as the distinguished speaker on this important occasion, which is an annual event conducted by the Indian Institute of Banking and Finance. His speech on the topic, increasing longevity, significance of pension and innovation, was truly an engrossing and enlightening experience. It will be difficult for us to really sum up because he had made many learning points. I'll just try my level best to recapitulate some of the points which he has made, which were truly enlightening. He started off with saying, Dr. Bandyopadhyay started off with saying that India will become soon the most populous country. The percentage of population 65 plus, which is 6.4 in 2019, will increase to as much as 13.8 in 2050. The support ratio will come down, and because rise of nuclear families, old age homes have increased, they are costly. The reverse mortgage loan, which was a well thought of scheme, but did not really take off for sentimental reasons among the Indian population. Dementia is a factor. Lifestyles have not changed much. Although a person has retired, he or she thinks that he will cut down his or her expenses. In actual practice, it does not come down. He or she likes to maintain his or her own lifestyle as before prior retirement. Therefore, these people seek some inflation protected schemes, but then the pension schemes on offer in India presently are disintegrated. So with the result, a pensioner or a would-be pensioner is difficult to understand which pension fund or which fund will suit him or her the most. Although efforts are being made by PFRDA, something more needs to be done. And so far as the Mercer Index is concerned, India is ranked not very well, 40 out of 43 on 3 parameters. Financial literacy, financial behavior are slightly different. Post-COVID pandemic, post-pandemic, there is a change, a perceptible change in the savings habit of people because people have started realizing the importance of savings and they have started savings. Of course, much needs to be done. The pension coverage, when he spoke about the pension coverage, NPS and APY, 4.7 crore subscribers with an AUM of 6 lakh crore. Health insurance cover also important. Basically, what is needed going forward, or even today and going forward, is user-friendly processes for the elderly, accessibility of services, simple products and efficient services. And India today, as of time, pension assets as a percentage of GDP is only 14% as compared to more than 100% in certain developed countries like USA or UK or some other such countries. So what is basically needed is evolve, adapt, innovate, respect dignity and well-being. And to sum up, he said that on 1st October, there's a Senior Citizen Day and NPA Divas is being celebrated. Many things have been done by PFRDA. More things need to be done in future. That's what he has said. And so thank you really. Indeed, it was a very enlightening speech which had many learning points. And the extent to which the lecture was so interesting because it garnered or it saw many questions which were very focused and pointed. And you were very excellent in answering those questions. So we're really thankful to you, sir, for giving us such a wonderful lecture. We also wish to place on record our sincere thanks to Sri Atul Kumar Goelji, MD and CEO UCO Bank and Vice President IABF, Sri Prabhakaraji, MD and CEO Canara Bank and Vice President of IABF, Mr. Civil, Dhanlakshmi Bank, and Ramesh Babu, CEO of KVB. We also thank the senior officials of the bank, like the earlier CEOs, Dr. Misra has also attended, and the distinguished dignitaries and the participants for attending the lecture. It was really a wonderful session, sir. It has been a great pleasure to have you and to have all the respected dignitaries on the virtual dais. Thank you. Thank you once again, sir, for such an enlightening lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
On behalf of IIBF, stay blessed, stay happy. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you to all. Yeah.
Okay, we'll end this lecture here. Thank you, everyone.